Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Help the Helpers. And it's the first Monday in June. We're in summer now, at least in my mind. I think the weather in New York isn't agreeing with me, but maybe where you are, it's summer. And we're so happy to have Neil Dunaetz with us this morning, who will be helping us to explore the process model that Neil, you say, is its own beast. So we're gonna be invited to dinner at Neil's house to explore this beast.
Thank you. And good morning, good day, good evening, whatever, to everyone. I'm here in southern Arizona in the United States, where it's early morning. And I want to start, and for me, something that's not today's topic is implied before I'm able to just go on. I cannot just go on as if it isn't happening. I see it. The world sees it. I am broken by it. The world is broken by the ongoing horrible genocide and ethnic cleansing of Palestinians by Israel, the United States, Great Britain, Germany, and others. We must acknowledge it. We must condemn it. We must stop it. Nothing justifies genocide. Nothing. I affirm the right of the Palestinian people to return to their historic land and their right to Palestinian national sovereignty thereon. Now I can go on. So,
Neil, Neil,
yes.
maybe we need a moment because
Hmm.
you can go on, but maybe maybe you have to wait for us. So
Okay,
let's just take a moment.
that's very fair.
We have to digest what you said, make space for it. Make space for now you can go on. And can we go on now to talk about the process model? So we're just checking inside. And those of you who have your cameras off, if you would put your cameras on, I think we'd be able to connect with you and see in your eyes if you're ready to go on. Thank you. Thank you. Would you just raise your hand if you're ready to go on? Okay. Yes. It's what's living in us. We're all together and we might feel lots of different things with what Neil said. Acknowledge all the feelings in us. And then we can throw the ball back to Neil.
So, as a way of introducing myself, I would like to confess what I think were some of my advantages in reading a process model. At the time I began reading, I was living in a tent. On land I was farming. Day and night I was immersed, actively immersed, consequentially immersed in wider, more than human life. I had experienced something extraordinary one evening amidst all this pulsing life, the meaning of which was clear, but there was no way to think it. I needed a way to think it, not just label it, but really think how it could be. I had heard that Eugene Gendlin, the focusing guy, was a philosopher, so I thought, maybe his philosophy could help me think this. A college dropout, I was relatively less trained and less habituated in reading and rendering formidable texts. This would work in my favor, reading APM, a process model. Also, no one expected me to understand or to produce anything from reading APM. I was under no pressure. My reading wasn't baggaged with social conditions or professional considerations or preconceptions about the kind of thing APM would be. On the contrary, my stance was that APM would need to make sense in the thick, unnarrated, more than human living, which was my world and livelihood at that time. I existed, perhaps pathologically, at the edge of society, at the edge of everyday social consensus. I had no attachment that reading APM should result in something culturally recognized, much less approved. Quite the opposite. I deeply needed and sought a way to think beyond the culturally given. As a focuser, I knew the feeling into implying move, as I called it. I knew what doing that is like. I could do it at will. And so I read. So if I am already, I'll just try to do that.
Just the green square at the bottom.
Yeah. Okay. And how is that?
Good.
Is that working?
Yep.
Okay, good. Okay, so entering. This is Gendlin's next to the last sentence of the whole book, not counting footnotes and stuff like that. Quote, so we see that indeed it is not breakdown or limit that our terms, all 8 terms qua instancing in instance of itself space, do not resolve schematically. The perhaps more understandable part of the sentence, it is not breakdown or limit that our terms do not resolve schematically. So for me, this is, the meaning is clear. I don't know what he really means, though. I've never, because to me, I've never experienced APM as a problem resolving schematically. But he sees something there. He's, I'm sure, referring to something. But anyway, I think that's the more graspable part of the sentence. I want us to be more interested in the thicker part of the sentence. Our terms, meaning our terms in this text, our terms in this model, all 8 terms qua instancing in instance of itself space. And then the thickest part of that, all 8 terms qua instancing in instance of itself space. And then I make my own little adaptation for myself. It's almost like just to try it out on myself. The model is all 8 terms qua instancing in instance of itself space. So yes, I've jumped us right into the like this thickness, this incredible thickness. On a given day, I may have trouble
Do you want
really
to,
holding this, grasping this, and it's taken me years to be able to just really do it. And so what I want to say is that a lot of what we'll be doing today, would be as if we are bells being rung by what Gendlin's process model text is doing. And so it's not the usual something is said and then I'm supposed to understand it. It's like something happens. And then in that happening, I'm affected, I'm changed, I'm different, I'm whatever. Okay, so something like that. So I hope we don't feel like we have to dwell on, let's stay right here until we figure this out, because first, I don't think it happens that way with this. And second, I think we'll actually go further by going on. We gain more by being able to move on. Okay. Oh, and if you need to say something, or if you need to ask something, I encourage you to do, and I may not see your hand, but you can, however it happens. I'm not saying how much time we'll take there, but I don't want to just impose. I'm capable of that, but I don't want it to be that. And please consider what I say here today as my saying, not Gendlin's. For Gendlin, you can go to the book. So this is more experiential, especially that we do together explicitly. And then much of the rest of it is experiential in just like that being the bell that's being rung kind of way. Okay. So I think we need to distinguish true statements about a process model from process model terms qua instancing in instance of itself space. And so we'll do a little example of this. And so just please notice any difference you may find in your bodily experiencing, the quality of that when I read. A process model is about living process. A process model is about living process. Environment 2 is the process. Environment 2 is the process. And so I would say whatever, it's not, again, this isn't about like having understanding, much less a clear understanding. I would say that whatever difference experientially hearing that, reading that makes, that's what's important to go on with for today, but also in reading the text. If you would read the text, and I think it's fine if someone never reads the text. It's a thing, but if someone does, then this is what I say. It's like be aware of the bodily impact of engaging Gendlin's exact saying and then going on. Okay. So now we'll do more of this sort of thing. I will read several short sentences, and please notice experientially any subtle difference, change from one sentence to the next. And just notice there's no need to try to formulate anything about what you experience. If something or as it makes sense or doesn't make sense, whatever, if you can just let that be the way it is. I'll try to remember to read each twice. A process model is about the implicit. A process model is about implicit functioning. Reading a process model is into implicit functioning. Reading happens into the implicit, comma, functioning. Process is the model. The model is implicit functioning. Functioning. Do you feel the difference that comma makes there? Shall I read those again? Okay, let me read those again. A process model is about the implicit. A process model is about implicit functioning. Reading a process model is into implicit functioning. Reading happens into the implicit, comma, functioning. Process is the model. The model is implicit functioning. Functioning. And again, if you can just be with that as we go on, but if you really want or really need, if it's, if it seems so right to ask her, then I don't want to prohibit. Okay. So next, I want to distinguish 8 self-instancing as a kind in its own right.
Oh, I just wanted to
Oh,
say,
here it is.
I think some people don't know that the numbers 8 and 7 refer to chapter 8 and chapter 7 of a process model. They're not
Yeah,
numbers on a clock or something like
right.
that.
And this is where screen share could be helpful, but it's okay. And now I have to go back to my papers.
Neil, if you want to do screen sharing, don't let me inhibit you.
Well, let's try it without it a little first. But Jim is right, that this isn't like the 8, like one circle on top of another 8. It's the Roman numeral 8, and it comes from or with the chapter designations that Gendlin gave. But I could say it in the other direction, is that the chapter designations come from process, kind of process, or the kind of instancing that Gendlin is doing. So it's okay. So only in a process model does Gendlin distinguish 8 as a further kind and level of development in living process. The model is generated from, at, and in this new level. Gendlin's 7, that's Roman numeral 7 / Roman numeral 8, Gendlin's 7-8 process distinction in APM has been interpreted by some readers as a distinction between language and felt sensing, or between symbolization and bodily experiencing, or something similar. But I think such interpretations are wrong insofar as they drop out a process model's actual 8 instancing in the implicit, which is the working, sense-making oomph of the model. Such interpretations want to reduce APM back to more familiar, graspable things, back to 7. And so I'm using these terms. It's the only way they become something in the world, is using them. I think that in some way Gene's whole working life was on the way to becoming able to explicate 8 as a kind in its own right, and do so in terms that don't drop out 8's 8ness by rendering it in 7 terms. To avoid this sure pitfall, Gendlin, the philosopher, needed to make a whole system of 8 terms qua instancing in instance of itself space. This is what he means when he says in the book that this is the first model of its kind on this new level. I put system in quotes because APM is not any usual kind of system. The kind of system APM is. The kind of system a process model is beyond simple conceivability. And are you aware what a contradiction it is to even say 8 terms? And that's Gendlin said it, 8 terms. I would have never come to say that, I don't think. Terms have always been creatures of language and culture. Terms, we now can say after Gendlin's 7-8 distinction, could only be 7. And then comes Gendlin deliberately, impossibly, formally structuring, putting structuring in quotes, formally structuring terms qua instancing in instance of itself space, building up a whole system of 8 terms, each an 8 social object that can reliably recur. So right here in this slot, when we let a felt sense come and we have that felt sense, that's an 8 object, and it's ours. It's personal. It's not social. So this is an indication. What I'm saying, I want to indicate how radical what Gendlin has done. Yeah. We negate this achievement, Gendlin's achievement, when we mistakenly interpret a process model as somehow just an extension of experiencing and the creation of meaning, his early philosophical work, or the philosophy of focusing, or some philosophy of psychology, or of experiencing, or whatever. I would say let us not put it into a box like that. let it speak for itself and do what it does. As a personal note, it turns out that the 7-8 distinction is what I needed but lacked to be able to really think what was lived that night in the field. Not so much 8 per se, but the 7 human world as newly distinguished in Gendlin's 8 terms. Any comments or questions? And I'm making a little space here, I hope, but I want to make it.
Neil, may I ask you? I think you're for me, on a very, very important point. And you said 8 terms is a contradiction because terms are 7 objects.
Yes.
And if you say 8 on its own, can you say more about what you mean with there are 8? I don't know what you said. On its own, its own, there is no word for it, huh?
Yes. There isn't 8. 8 is like a placeholder. Someday there may be a word for that place. Like we have a word behavior, like animal behavior. We have a word symbolization, symboling, or pattern process. We haven't lived enough of this 8 kind for there to be that kind of sure.
Neil, hi everybody.
Yes, BJ.
It's BJ. Those of us who try to read a process model could throw in little definitions like chapter 7 is about the coming of language in human evolution. But there's something about the confusion itself, the bewilderment, the inability to find any words. That's the experience of 7 going to 8, right, or being in 8.
Yes, 7 as rendered or given in 8 in the text by Gendlin. What you're saying seems so important and is so right.
Yes,
we can, and people do. We easily say, oh yeah, chapter 7 is about the development of language. Mm-hmm. Okay. But really what Gendlin is doing, he's tracking the implicit changes that make for this. Everything is thought in terms of the implicit.
Yes.
While happening as part of actual events.
Actual events. So an actual event might be falling in love and remaining in love. And it's impossible to put that into words, really. That first cachet, that first overwhelm, and then 10 years later, what makes you stay? There's something that makes you stay. Mm-hmm. And I won't say any more after this, except I'm just trying to give a little encouragement to folks who are just bewildered and confused, that it's part of it. Mm-hmm. And I'm in it myself. And Neil, thank you. thank you for bringing this experience to us.
Most
Yes.
welcome. Yeah. Thank you for saying all that. Yeah, I think for myself, I would amend that it's impossible to put into words, or what we may have that it's impossible to put into words.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean it will always be impossible.
Yes.
I like to mark it that way.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. So the nature of the beast.
I think Susan has
Oh,
her.
I'm sorry, Susan.
Yes, BJ, I want to thank you so much for that, because that is arising in me, confusion, sadness, and I wondered if this is an experience for other people, and if this is the actual attending right here of the process to be alive to that. And as I feel that and say that, and that this is my experience, that what happens for other people. And the other thing that's striking to me is the studying that I've been doing in implicit memory. That word implicit shows up again, but I'm so hesitant to say it has anything to do with this, because there's so much language here about, oh, it's not what you know already, or what you feel already, or anything you've experienced already. But there's still a part of me that's going, was Gendlin trying to point to that, which other people are describing using different techniques or different language or different?
Yeah, it's a good question.
Trying to converge. But even before we get to the question, because the question already is like this intellectual, like, what is this? I feels like there's something underneath or the intellectual, what is this, is that maybe the drive to understand or grasp or have power. Like, to go back to that, like, what is that? What is that? If that makes any sense. Like, that's so implicit, right? I want
Yeah, in as much as Gendlin, a living being, did this, then yes, in countless ways, it's already has its relevances to to anyone's living and experiencing. And I want to say that what Gendlin did was utterly new, and no one could anticipate it. Even Gendlin, after it was done late in his life, he said to me on a phone call that, I, you know, it's hard for me to believe that this came from me, because he knows himself, he knows his faults, he knows his, you know, he's a being with all that human whatever, just like the rest of us, and yet he did something which, as he said, he could feel himself carrying forward the whole of Western philosophy.
So again, I'm left with this confusion, right? Because this
Yeah,
is big
confusion is
thing
good.
that he's trying to do that somehow is so hard to grasp, that it's like
It's
like
if we can go on. See, I go into so much more if we can go
okay.
on. Is that okay?
Yes, totally.
Okay.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. So the nature of the beast, and I see other hands raised, but let's go on and keep what you have, and let it be changed if it is. Okay. How APM, being its own beast, must be engaged in its own terms. How APM doesn't neatly fit with or reduce to how we otherwise know Gendlin. How the text as written implies our reading it qua instancing in instance of itself space. How each chapter of the APM text uniquely instances 8. How APM is 8 throughout, rendered qua instancing of itself space. How APM's 8 never translates into common language or common understandings. And each time I read that, now that I've written it, I question that superlative, never, but I think that's right. It just won't. And we have less when we try to make it. When we try to hold it in common language as common understanding. It's not wrong to do it, but we have less. How APM makes its own fresh inherencies, and how the reader is also faced with making these same fresh inherencies along with Gendlin and the text. And right here is the intimacy. So before I ever met or spoke to or corresponded with Gendlin, I felt intimate with him. I'm really close because I was understanding this, and and this was his. This is from him. It was right there. How the model is still, at most, an intermittency in actual living, as are each of its 8 terms taken singly, still only intermittent. How the model is still at most an intermittency in actual living, as are each of its terms taken singly, still only intermittent. Engaging the beast. So I kind of give this, kind of as pointing to how to engage. And hold it lightly, let reading APM happen into the space of felt meaningfulness before understanding. The model applies before one understands. It isn't a matter of figuring it out. The specific language of the text is meant as instancing in instance of itself space. So its meaning is rendered only in 8 terms, qua happening. So we don't stand back from the text. We read it, we stand back. And what does he mean there? What is that saying? Of course we do that. I did that. We do it and do it and do it. But the reading that gets to the meaning is where we read the exact thing directly into the body that is like the meaning body, the meaning, it's the flesh of meaning, and then it's like you become again the bell that's being rung by this strange text, and it's unforgiving in its strangeness, and it's stubborn, and it's not changing to something more digestible, and that's needed. Can you resist, or at least be aware of the tendency to interpret what you read in terms of what you already know? And again, we all do this. No one would not do this. Just it's very, very human to try to understand something new and strange in terms of what we already know. But at least we should be aware that when we're doing that, starting to do that, it's okay. It's fine. It's not immoral. But if we find ourselves doing that, it's like, oh, yeah, I'm inserting my meaning that I already have here, and then it skips the process of the, okay, I'm getting ahead. How able are you to abide with not understanding and still keep reading? Is there a way you can remind yourself to engage APM's concepts as events in their own right? For they are indeed process concepts in that they do what they are about, and only then can they be about that. One lives their fresh forming, 8, actuality, and that is how they mean. And where the text doesn't make sense the way it's written, the problem is not the text. Gendlin wrote APM clearly and succinctly. Nor is the problem you personally. The problem is what Gendlin means is not yet bodily possible. Past experience, as bodily implicit, has not yet become able to function so as to do, along with the text, what the text, as precisely written, is doing. The organism needs more encounters, more experience, engaging APM's exact saying to creatively modify the function of past experience. Keep reading makes bodily possible what isn't anything already body. For any who have studied experiencing and the creation of meaning, you can probably hear where I'm speaking here is in the area of the last two of chapter 3, ECM, functional relationships, relevance and circumlocution. Relevance is how many meanings function implicitly in the having of any one. And circumlocution is the creative modification of the function of relevance. And so when we experience something that we can't understand, this is the body has to become able to understand that. And what Gendlin says is more experience is needed. It's not a matter of explaining. More experience with the new is needed. Okay. Let the text's exact saying make you need something you don't yet have, just so. I mean, it does that anyway, but our habit is to resist that and to just want to go right to some understanding, some having or knowing. But we want to let the text exact saying make us need right there, and that needing what we don't have. Like that's where the model starts to come, starts to live, starts to be something that can be actual. The reader needs every possible advantage. If you're reading the text, find and use Gendlin's intentional parallel of development in chapter 7a and chapter 8a. The parallel is in terms of the implicit functioning. It is not a parallel of kind or level or anything explicit. But it's very deliberate what he does there. And having worked to follow the implicit transition, the implicit development, the implicit change that is, really Gendlin's what's involved and what's at the core of the derivation of language, the development of language, then once we have it in the terms of implicit functioning, we again need that innate. And especially because, 8 is just new to us. We have hardly any experience with this. Even those of us who have focused for 20 or 30 years or more, it's still, we're such a beginning. And here I want to make an observation about difference in order of progression. In focusing and thinking at the edge, the felt sense comes and awaits symbolization, whether we symbolize it just then or not, but it's there, it awaits. In reading APM, on the other hand, we already have the just right, clear symbolization. It is clear. It's Gendlin's text, what he said. It's written very clearly, with hardly any exceptions. The reader's challenge, then, is to let Gendlin's exact saying in the text form in us its corresponding just so constellations of felt meaningfulness. So do you see how the order is reversed from focusing and thinking at the edge on the one hand to reading a process model on the other? We need we need felt havings that we don't have yet, that our body can't produce yet. There's nothing in our experience that enables our bodies to do what Gendlin did. It's still hard for me to grasp how a human being could do what he did, but he did it. And this is okay. So here again, we can make a space for questions, comments, reflections. You can even throw tomatoes because we're online and it can't hurt me.
Live, yeah.
So I think there were a couple people maybe from before who had a hand up.
I did.
If we want to, if you have something now.
Sure, I even took notes. I don't know if that's allowed.
My tomatoes can't get to you either.
Here are 3 questions that they're not really to be answered. They're just questions that occurred to me. How would studying the process model help a person in their own focusing practice? If one is an English speaker, would it help to read it in, say, Japanese? Would it make any difference? And would it help to read it on mushrooms? And I only say that because you're a farmer.
Well, and I'm a former tripper too, so there you go.
Not
You know,
surprised.
I
Yeah.
used LSD in a learning mode, I would say. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, good. Yeah. Yeah. On the second question, translating a process model is its own beast.
No, but I'm saying that
I know.
reading it in do you get what my point here?
Yeah, but I'm getting to like what would
Okay.
be a pitfall there. That Gendlin wrote it in English. English had become his first language, even though it wasn't, historically his first language. But it certainly became his working language. He thought with English terms, and but he wrote the text so as the text would make the reader need very specifically ... That's the challenge of a translation project. It has to make the reader reading in the translated to language, in this case, your example, Japanese, makes the reader need just so the way the English did there. It's not a matter of translating word for word. In some places that might work, but I think in many places that might break down. And because I don't speak any language well enough as a second language, German, Japanese, I couldn't even start to know what those translations turned out as. But I would say if one has the capacity to read in English, that would be the preferred way. But you're welcome. Yeah, of course.
No, I think that you're taking my question literally. I was saying in an ironic fashion that this is Japanese to many of us. I was making that point.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So I can see that it would seem foreign like that. And I've
Exactly.
traveled a lot where I didn't know anything of languages and had to learn my basic 20 words to survive. And so I know what that is. But process model is it's foreign than a foreign language. It's different in kind. It's different in, after all, Japan is a human society, like the English speaking societies are human societies and all other societies. And a process model is going beyond that. It's starting beyond language. It's thinking before language and beyond it at once. And so but this is going into fun weeds. I like your third question a lot.
It's really the same question. They're all the same question in
Yeah.
different forms. It's that, in other words, to you, this is something that you kind of groove on and feel on and make an assumption that we can all do that. But I'm proposing that you have some sort of affinity for that sort of grooving on words when you don't, in a sense, you already are in a process model. So you can read the book. And the question is, if we're kind of unit model-y, just grooving on it is not necessarily going to put us where you seem to be inherently. I could be wrong, but I mean, it reminds me of a friend of mine who is an artist and says anyone can draw. And I say, well, not as well as you do. I mean, there is such a thing as,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, okay. Yeah, of course, are different, we're different. Our experiences are different, our aptitudes are what they are. Um, and so anyway, can we, is someone else? I see Jim has a hand up. Is anyone else who hasn't?
And Nati.
Nurit has waited for several times to speak.
Okay.
Nurit, yeah.
My turn?
Yes, yes.
Oh, okay. I speak few languages, by the way. And okay. If I were a student and I was listening to your text, I would have said, I have no idea what you're talking about. But I listened to that from a point of view of energy. And I listen to the movement. And the movement, and because, I also do body work, it really reminded me of what happens in the tissue before it releases. So what happens in the tissue is that it goes to a pause. And that's number 7 to me. The pause moves us into a new movement, which to me, that's like the felt sense. In other words, it's a new opening, a new experience that we don't know. We have never experienced that, but it's all a matter of movement and energy. That's how I feel that process. And to me, that process reminded me of when I was a little girl, that I had an experience and all the adults around me tried to give words to this experience, and it wasn't what I experienced.
Right.
And I always felt so misunderstood.
Yeah, it'd have been better if they hadn't have said anything, right?
Yeah, I mean, because of that, because the words did not get that awesomeness of the experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's what I
And
want.
yeah.
The newness of that, the first impression, oh wow, look at this bird, right? How wonderful. There's no words to that. It goes into your body.
Yeah.
That's where you experience that.
Yeah. It's this whole experience, and language is
that's
just this,
yeah.
like how, so it's a question like how could or how might language ever come to hold more of that?
And I think that languages have characters. Like my first language was Italian, and the musicality of that and the movement of that. But my real language is Hebrew, which is very, very, very square language. Much less, So I think that has a lot to do with how we develop and how we think and the brain and all of that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Jim?
Yes, I'd like to say something to the therapists among us. A problem that faces therapists often is, why don't people change? Or this person needs to change, but they're not doing it. And one thing that Gendlin wrote about in when he discusses theories of psychotherapy is how they're all based on the idea that everything is fixed. Words have fixed meanings. They're all sitting out there waiting to be used. And so the only thing you can do is rearrange things. And if you take a person and you rearrange them, they haven't changed. They just rearranged. The problem is when you go from 7 to 8, in 7, you can only rearrange. But of course, you can also, 7 doesn't really exist. 7 is a fantasy that people in 8 are stuck in and need to change from. They need a therapist to bring them into 8. The problem, the reason it's called eye of I space or instance of itself space is there's no kinding going on. What's kinding means is this is like this and that is like that. They're all of the same kind. But in eye of I space, everything is itself. It's an instance of itself. Nothing is like anything else except insofar as it's like that, but it's not like that. They're not the same. Things aren't the same. Everything is what it is. So the idea of change is to become an 8 person instead of a 7 person. And if it were that easy, we wouldn't need therapists. That's all I want to say.
Yeah. So if I can push back on that a little, and I'm
Your tomatoes won't reach me.
yeah, not that kind of pushback, because I appreciate what you're saying. I think part of it has to do with how in focusing our felt sense is personal, and also oftentimes we wait and a fresh felt sense arises each time. It's and we don't carry on the process from the previous time that we made this pause for focusing. And I heard Eugene Gendlin be critical of that, and it was almost like a frustration. Why does everyone start again as if they didn't as if what happened last time hadn't happened? It's like what the body has from that 8 direct referent formation, as he calls it in a process model, or the felt sense formation. He's more interested in the formation process than even the what falls out and results. It's because in terms of thinking, it's the formation process that interests him. And then again, what he did in writing and making a process model is he made a whole system of terms, 8 terms, that do have very much so a commonness. And he points to the commonness directly in the book, and he says a kind of concept I call interaction first. He could have just said the concept interaction first. He said the kind of concept. And I started like looking at that and holding that. It's like, yes, it seemed every concept of the model is a unique way of instancing interaction first. And interaction first isn't two interacting as the first thing. It's not that. Interaction first means interaction makes the participants. The interaction is first, and then there's the participants. So yes, all of the concepts have that we could call it in a 7-way: similarity, commonality, and it's intended and it's powerful. And Gendlin made a system. Again, in quotes, system. And so I think the main thrust of what I would like to have communicated today is that focusing process is like our entry, or was my entry anyway, in reading. I used that every time I got to the word implying. I said, oh, I have something for this here, even though I didn't know what he was doing in the text there, saying what he was saying with implying. But each time I got to that word, it was like I would right then and there feel into that feel into I call it feeling into the implicit. That's my little handle for it. And I let that function in the reading, which isn't a definition. It's an action. Yeah, it's something actual. Oh, I'm just now remembering, was it Susan's? Who's with the 3 questions? And I'm just remembering the first
That was
one.
Liz.
That was
Yeah.
Liz. Yeah, I'm just remembering thank you. Just remembering the first one, and now I forgot it again. Very, very pregnant.
The
Okay.
first question had to do with how would reading a process model help a focuser in their focusing practice.
Thank you, Jim.
Right. Yeah. I for me, it opened up so much. So much. I had much more maneuverability, and even that seems a little heavy-handed for focusing, but it was that where my deliberateness, my will could come in these different ways to move the process, to direct it where I sensed it needed to go. But that's just me. I mean, probably other people have different experiences with that.
I just wanted to say that I'm loving how we're coming to this together. And I remember Gene in one of his more psychotherapy papers saying that he wanted to create a hunger for another kind of concept. And what you're saying, Neil, is reminding me that it's the hunger that is the point, not that we get the thing. It's good if we can come closer to it, but the hunger itself is something that's very alive and
It's already rich, right?
it's already rich.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's also involved in how we come to have what we hunger for. Just like motivation in behavior. The animal is hungry, and we're animals, so we know this, yeah. And then we seek food. We find it, usually in our fridge or at a restaurant, or for us, hopefully it's available. And but yes, the impulse for it, the hunger, the needing what isn't. Yeah. So I think I want to go on this last part, and then we'll yeah. So in the publication of a process model by Northwestern University Press, there are a number of problems in that publication that I think, I can think of it this way at least, that they instance this its own beastness thing of APM. Because it's the kind of thing that it is, it almost led to or was vulnerable for these problems arising in the publication. And they're significant, which is why I want to speak about them. So first, loss of the subchapter designations A and B, and their corresponding subtitles atop each and every page, beginning in chapter 4, which all earlier versions of APM had. So I'm talking about something that seems maybe at first minor, but these subchapter designations and subtitles at the top of each page had been part of the at least 3 self-published hard copies before the 2018 or whatever it is officially published book, and also the several online versions. And I don't know how many of those there were, but this was always at the top of each page once there was an A and a B, and with their corresponding subtitles. And the loss of this in the published book is a huge and senseless loss for readers who are struggling to orient in Gendlin's precise yet unfamiliar 8 topography. So when I opened the new book, okay, so I have read from 3 versions of the self-published. This is the most recent, 1997. And then this is the Northwestern University publication. When I try to read in this, I can't function. I can't orient. I need those things at the top. And this is after what? 23 years of reading. A lot, a lot. And so just mentioning it once, right at the beginning of the chapter, or the A section and then the B section is not the same thing as it being there like that. Like I say, the reader needs every advantage. It's a challenge. Yeah. To move and live in the model, to become fluent in it, not in an interpreting way, but in a living forward way. As soon as one understands, one feels what could be next in the model beyond Gendlin. It's right there because it's all in the implicit already. Okay. A second problem in the publication. The final chapter ended up 8 instead of 8A. It had always been 8A in earlier versions, as Gendlin had always unquestionably intended. Huge meaning is lost by this error. Huge meaning. For one thing, dropping the A in 8A all but disappears the intentional 7A, 8A, see, I almost fell into it, 7A, 8A parallel I mentioned a few moments ago. Parallel of terms in the implicit or for the implicit. It's very deliberate, that parallel. And without the 8A corresponding to the 7A, which is still here in the published book, it's just less of a question that you would even look for that or find it. And even more importantly, the removal of the 8A designation changes how the final chapter would strongly point towards further developments in 8. Further developments in 8. Further developments in 8. Further 8 happening for its own sake. From the implying that now 8 implying, the increasing 8 implying, that is becoming more and more so because of the 8 living that we do. Focusing, that whenever. It doesn't have to be, it can be just pausing and grokking in that way. But especially when we're working deliberately. This seemingly minor omission, one letter, changes the effective nature of the entire text by presenting it as something much more seven than what Gendlin wrote. I mean, it's just amazing what difference that makes. A third point, also missing, is a note Gendlin agreed should be included in the publication. It was included in at least the final online version of a process model on the Focusing Institute website when it was there. It's not there now. And this is a more recent thing, clarifying. For Gendlin, there is as yet no 8b, but what had been mistakenly titled 8b in not just some, but many of the earlier self-published and online versions of a process model, Gendlin's clarifying in this note, it should have always been titled Appendix to 8a. So what we have now in the published book is just the chapter 8 and the appendix to 8. And this, again, this is like there's huge meaning lost in this. Importantly, this missing note of clarification by Gendlin, which he agreed should be included in the publication, but somehow it wasn't. It shows his active anticipation of further developments in 8 living and eventually full 8b context. Full 8b context. This is what makes us human beings and not whatever kind of ape animal that our ancestors were. Is that we develop context of a whole new kind. We started living this new kind of carrying forward, and we developed our context came to be these concepts where it's marked by the pattern, by the distinctions in language, not by behaviors per se. And that gives us culture, gives us language. And so it's a huge thing. He's talking about a new kind at that kind of level. Okay, and the final point. A personal refusal to be listed as one of the people who helped prepare the manuscript for what I could see was going to be a consequentially flawed publication. I worked in the committee, the little group, because there were some real punctuation problems, a few horrendous run-on sentences that, especially, I mean, one has to be very careful changing a text like that. But there were a few things that needed to be changed, and plus it needed to be, shaped up for the publisher. But as part of that, I could see that, oh my gosh, I can't believe what they're agreeing to. And the publisher doesn't grasp it, but apparently maybe other people in our little working group didn't either. And Gene was already old and failing at that point. It wasn't that long before his passing. So I didn't want my name to be listed as someone contributing because this isn't what I would want it to be. It's just my attempt at integrity there. Okay, so I'll stop. We have, 5 minutes left?
Yes.
I have a short poem.
Oh, yes.
Before you read the poem, Neil, let's just take a moment to let all of this come into our digestive systems. Poetry seems like another way of aiding.
I wouldn't know how to ask for the tendrils' intricate twining, negotiating height for light. Let me try that again. I wouldn't know how to ask for the tendrils' intricate twining, negotiating height for light, or pretend to hear in the bird's call any song but its own. Or pretend to hear in the bird's call any song but its own. However much or little I've become, add my life to theirs. Would anyone like to hear it again? I wouldn't know how to ask for the tendrils' intricate twining, negotiating height for light, or pretend to hear in the bird's call any song but its own. However much or little I've become, add my life to theirs. Thank you for being here, for inviting me.
Thank you so much, Neil.
Thank you.
We've all had a real experience.
Me too.
I want to announce or remind you that Dana and Baruch are going to be doing a workshop here in New York, right here in this room on Thursday evening from 6 to 8. And those of you who are in other places and can't come here to New York, it will be recorded. I'm not sure I can vouch for uh, the quality of the recording, but we're going to do our very best. Maybe Jim is going to help us. So those of you who are in the New York area, I'll see you on Thursday. And they'll be talking about the process model from the point of view of the Kabbalah. So I think that will be another doorway. I'll see you all next week. And Neil, thank you so much.
Yeah, before we close the meeting, I just want to copy the chat because I haven't had a chance to look at anything. I think I've got it now. Thank you.
Christine, maybe you could put the flyer for Thursday in the chat for us. Okay. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.